This
Quorum.
conference will now be recorded.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're looking for one more for a quorum, if I'm counting correctly.
Okay. I mean, I can. I'm going over there anyway, whether it's a half hour or not.
I know. Will he count as a quorum if he's still logged on?
No, that's why we'll. Oh, wait. You know, I'm doing this on my phone because my computer froze up when I jumped on it. There we go.
You gotta
So this
stop
is all
jumping
new
on
to
that
me.
computer.
Okay. Let's see. It's 6:58. We still got a couple minutes. I'm going to do this more often. We got 10 people already here.
Why? How many do we need for a quorum?
Well, that's concluding staff.
No, I know, but we can't count that.
And, yeah, I know.
We need 6.
Well, you got Rick Ward here from Winchendon, and just one of us count to the quorum?
Yes.
Okay. So, Rick, you got your speaker on?
Yes.
Okay. Well, John said he'll be glad to take over the meeting. I've got, we had a funeral today, and I've got some family I got to deal with. So, can you take over my spot?
I'll be here for any votes.
Okay, very good. Then, John, it's your show, and I'm going to bail if that's okay.
That's fine with me.
Okay.
You take
Have a
care.
good one. Thank you.
Long.
Actually, with the it's kind of fun.
Can I just try? I'm trying to identify. There is one caller in here, and I'm just trying to find out who that is, so I could put a name to it, so we know for roll call or whatnot.
I know. I had shut my camera off. Does that matter?
No, I don't think so. But who is caller 1? Did somebody call in?
Yeah, it's Roland Lambalot.
Okay.
Oh, great. Hi, Roland. Okay, so that's not a not a member. I'm counting 6 right now.
Mike, Peter. Glenn, who are the
Glenda.
6?
I've
Who
got
are the 6?
I've got Mike Smith.
Yeah.
I've got Rick from Winchendon. That's 2.
Rick Ward, yep.
Yeah, we have Peter is 3.
Right.
Peter Cunningham. We have Sean Copeland.
John, yeah.
Hi, Sean. I think that's 4.
Right.
We have JT, which is either John Telepsiak or James Taylor. That's number 5.
Right.
One of the same.
And nope, I don't see 6. It was just 5.
Yeah, we need one more. Yep.
Yeah.
Who's RL?
Roland Lambalot.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm looking at the bylaws, and I'm wondering if we can, as the bylaws say, it's the executive committee. Linda, you've been here for so many years. I'm looking under the wrong place. It says executive committee can meet on behalf of the commission, approve the warrant, review and act upon regional reviews, which is archaic, and then addressing other functions deemed critically important to the operation of the planning district as needed. Doing the audit, I would think, is critically important. So I don't think there's really a problem. Clinda, what do you think?
I don't think there's a problem, but it's my understanding that the executive committee can act, but these aren't members of the executive committee.
That's
No.
right. We don't.
Am I the only one?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
John, you're
that's
the
what
only
they said.
executive committee member.
Yeah, that's the executive committee section of the bylaws. What we can do is we can,
We're getting more people. Maybe we can wait a little bit.
We have Veronica Kell. Hi, Veronica.
is she coming into the meeting?
Yes.
She just, yeah.
You just unmuted.
Did
Very
I
good.
just unmute?
Well, that's 6.
That's 6. There we go. Okay.
So while we're legal, Mr. Vice President, if you want to continue, go ahead.
Well, then I would open this meeting, the MRPC meeting of Thursday, March 25th, 2021 at 7:03. Excuse me, do we do introductions?
Do we do a roll call?
All right, well then let's do a roll call. I'll start. John Telepsiak,
Peter Cunningham Groton.
Veronica Kell Townsend.
Sean Copeland, Air.
Rick Ward, Winchendon.
We have Alan Pease and Mike Smith as well.
Yes, we do.
Correct? Yep.
I didn't see Alan. Did you come in?
Yeah, I'm here. Alan Pease, Ashby.
Excellent. So now we have 7.
Okay, and then for staff, me, Linda Parmenter.
Jason Stanton, staff.
John
Brad
Hughes.
Harris, staff. George Kahari, staff.
And
Linda Quinlivan, staff.
hi, Linda. And
Hi.
Linda has Charlie there, and then Glenn Eaton staff.
And then we have Roland Lambalot, the auditor, as a guest. And I think that's it.
right, is there anybody we've missed? Speak up, please. No, I think you're right. I think that's it. So, is there any announcements you want to make, Glenn? Or should we move right
Sorry,
on?
no, I would just dive into the meeting unless somebody else, one of the members has an announcement. No, I would just dive into the minutes and then go to the audit. Sir, thank you.
So I would I'd entertain a motion to accept the March 4th minutes.
I'll offer a motion that we approve the minutes from March 4th, 2021.
Second.
There's been motioned and seconded to accept these minutes. Is there any concerns or questions? Hearing none, by roll call, all those in favor of accepting these minutes, say aye.
Oh, yeah, Cunningham, I'm going to abstain. I was not at the meeting, so I'm abstaining.
And for Sean Copeland, I'm also abstaining.
And Alan Pease is abstaining as well.
Uh-oh.
Veronica Kell, aye.
Why don't I do the roll call? Is Mike
Yeah.
Smith a voting member?
Yeah, because we got initials and
Yeah.
I don't have it written down of who's here.
Is Mike Smith a voting member?
Yes, he is.
Okay, Mike Smith. Mike, you're muted.
Just
Okay,
signify.
moving on.
with-
Rick Ward.
Aye.
Peter Cunningham, you said you
Abstain,
abstained?
yes, I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay, Sean Copeland is abstained. Veronica Kell said aye, I believe. Alan Pease abstained. John Telepsiak.
Aye.
And then I can't get all the way down to see who these last, that's Linda P. and Roland. Did I get everybody, I think? All the voting
Yeah, you did.
members? Okay.
All right, so the minutes have been accepted. where are we going from there?
The audit.
Let's, if you need something to say, or should we just turn it over to Roland?
I would say we turn it over to Roland, John.
All right, Roland, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
It's all yours.
Okay, thank you. I was kind of hoping we might have been able to do this a little earlier in the year because the books were ready a little earlier, but obviously the situations out in the real world have kind of derailed the greatest of plans. The pandemic has changed the Commission's work landscape from mostly in office to remote, and this has had an effect on potentially causing what is known as a scope limitation in auditing. This is when an auditor is precluded from performing certain audit functions. This is more of a concern, though, in the private sector and not in a government agency like yourselves. The audit was performed for the most part in my office. We were provided all materials requested in order to perform the procedures developed in our audit programs. We did schedule one full day on site to look at items we felt we needed to see and review in person. I felt that our years of experience with auditing the Commission statements and understanding the financial and accounting peculiarities of the agency helped us to mitigate any issues that we might have in rendering opinions on MRPC's financial position and compliance with federal program requirements. The audit reflects an unmodified opinion on the financial position, and there are no findings to be reported on in the areas of internal control and compliance. I had sent out a handout called the Historical Retirement Plan Activity, and it was indicated to me that I guess you would be having these documents that I had sent on a screen. That's the first one I wanted to go over with you. And I kind of entitled this particular schedule, We Have Been Here Before. This is kind of a topic that we have been discussing for a number of years, and it doesn't seem like it's ever going to end. And I just wanted to present this to quickly review and highlight the potential impact on the agency. The state was the first in line in 2014. After they were audited, it was determined that they should have been getting reimbursed for pension benefits paid to MRPC retirees. So you'll see in the state the far right column on the 2014 where it says state letter. This is an annual letter the agency gets indicating to them how much they paid supposedly for retirees of the Commission. And one thing you can do with that particular state number is obviously never mind the inaccuracies of the computations. They just send out pretty much for the first 5 years the same letter over and over with the same people with the same amounts of money. Now in 2015, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board made reporting pension plan information mandatory. Now, MRPC reports the existence of the plan in the footnotes, but expresses its opinion that they are not bound by the GASB rules as the state has made MRPC's contributions from the inception of the agency, and acknowledges the contribution in the State Retirement System Audit Report. Now, you can see that yearly contribution levels, expense, and state letter amounts are all over the place. You'll see years where the required contribution is $100,000, the audited expense is $207,000, and it varies. The letter, like I say, stays the same. If the GASB was followed, the net pension liability, the third column, would appear on MRPC's Statement of Financial Position. And we're going to cover that in a little bit. Like I said, I just wanted to kind of put that in front of you so that we've been talking about this over the years, and you can see the difficulty of trying to figure out how this thing is ever going to get resolved in a manner that's satisfactory to your agency and others. I know Glenn is working with MARPA to resolve this mess, and I assume that the pandemic and the vaccine rollout is going to push this matter further into the future. Any questions on this particular report? Like I say, I was just trying to give you a encapsulated presentation of what this looks like over the years and what is it that the state is going to do and what can you afford. The required contribution as I say, this is the amount the state pays on your behalf every year, would be difficult to meet. The audited expense, you can ignore that because that's not reality. And if you were to just go on the state letter and reimburse them every year, again, that's something totally out of reach of this agency and the others that I deal with as far as making it work. I'm not 100% certain with this as at the moment, but I think it's just going to be another year going by. In a few months, we'll get another letter. We'll add years to this schedule, and it could go on to who knows when, as far as who knows when. Any questions on this? Any clarifications?
I have one. On that state letter, so they don't back any of that up, they just give you a number?
They send a list of individuals, and it's the same list every year, the same names, the same numbers. And I can't imagine everybody is getting the same pension amount every year. There must be some COLA increases in it. There are new people that come on that they don't even pick up. Possibility of people being on there that have either passed away. It's just a mess over there.
Right, so the credibility of that letter is low.
Yeah. I think they had made an offer last year before, where if you paid 3 years, they would write off 3 years, which is obviously, is a non-starter actually.
Okay. This
Yeah,
isn't the
that was
state
the $1
letter.
million letter.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to Roland, point of clarification, yes. The MARPA has engaged a consultant. Legislation has been filed. I've reported on it in the last couple of meetings. Please don't quote me what the legislation is. There's always a designation in the House, HD something 79. But legislation has been filed on behalf of the regional planning agencies and 1 or 2 COGs that are involved in this. A piece of legislation normally takes 5 to 7 years to get through the state legislature to get to the governor's desk. Some obviously go through faster, but the reality is that 4,000 pieces of legislation on average are filed every year. 200 to 400 get enacted upon, and we will just see where this lands in the future. So that's just the addition to Roland's presentation on this point. Again, I don't believe any of the numbers either. Linda, if you want to comment on that, I know you're close to the numbers, but those numbers are not accurate.
I can make a comment. We've been being billed for 2 retirees who have put their pensions on hold since, I believe, 2015 or 16. And even though they're not collecting the pensions, we're still being billed for those employees. So that just, like Roland said, I mean, that shows the inaccuracy of the invoicing. So I just wanted to mention that point.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, so what's your recourse when that happens, Linda? I mean, do you tell them
So I have contacted the Board of Retirement a number of times to inform them that these 2 individuals aren't currently collecting their pension and they're billing us for them, and I'd get no response. So, yeah.
Right, because they have no answer. It sounds like they send out a letter to send out a letter.
Yeah. I think there's another interesting little addition that they include in the letter, where they provide you with a routing number and an account number and a bank name where you can wire in your funds.
It was very nice of them to do so.
Yeah.
Where did you get the other end of that?
Maybe a dollar might be
an offshore account somewhere.
Yeah.
Send them $1 as a kind of down payment and move on.
Okay.
If we're done with that section, we'll move on to the audited financial statements. I had indicated that I was going to do a certain number of pages, and I don't know if they're being put on the screen in the order that I had indicated that I would be talking about them. The first one is page 8, and that has to do with the net OPEB liability. That is for your health insurance, post-retirement health insurance. This is another number that has to be presented in the statements. Right now, it's a liability of $1,985,000. As I indicated on the prior statement, that historical statement, there's a net pension liability of $2,191,000. Now, one of them at the moment has to be presented. That's the health insurance one, the $1,985,000. The other one is not presented because obviously you're not taking the position that you owe this, that you have any involvement with it. Now, if you had put that net pension liability on top of net OPEB liability, you'd end up having liabilities, total liabilities exceeding $4.9 million, which is pretty out there for an agency that generates maybe about $1.5 million in total revenue. And the net position would end up, if you can see that in the screen, right now the net position is a negative $1.7 million. That would bring the negative net position up to $3.9 million. My opinion on these, as I've stated in the past, is neither of these things should be on the financial statements. They should be footnote material only, but I don't know if I'm in the minority on that. I don't think I would be, but obviously I'm not on the GASB board, so I have no opinion as to how things end up in a final stage. I just have my professional analogy of I don't think it should be there. But again, that's just so the potential is going to be, if this thing ever does get settled in some fashion, you may have to report that liability on there. Not going to mean a lot other than the fact that to make your statements look pretty lousy, as it might be that OPEB liability does now. Okay, anything on that? I'm going to move on to page 9. Now, page 9, there are a couple of items. One is under the operating expenses in the middle section, there's OPEB expense. And a couple of lines below that, you'll see pension expense. Now, those two items come up to $744,000, and that is 33% of all expenses. Now, the good part of that is that you don't have to try to get those back through your overhead rate, because that would just do such a number on it. It would just be, idiocy. But again, required presentations, at least on the OPEB. The pension expense is listed there because you would do that when you're in the type of position that you've taken, where someone else is responsible for your liability. The state is actually paying your liability. So then, therefore, you report the fact that there is a non-employer contributing entity, meaning the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, paying in that $302,000. So that's the only reason for the presentation like that. We're following the GASB 68 as far as all the disclosures, other than the fact that not admitting to any responsibility for contributing.
Can I ask a quick question about the OPEB liability?
Yeah.
Please. Yeah. Wasn't there some flexibility given to entities for fully funding that liability, that it didn't need to be done all at once, but they needed to show a plan to do it?
As far as I know, there is no requirement to fund these things. You can either do pay-as-you-go, which is the way the MRPC is operating, or you set up a trust and you fund it. I haven't seen anything in there that they changed it from GASB 45.
Yeah. Thank you.
And the next page is page 18. Again, we're back on the OPEB liability. And this is the schedule that indicates all of the adjustments that go from the beginning of the year balances to the end of the year. You'll see in the front column, the total OPEB liability. You'll see that $1,985,000. And it's also the same in the last column, because you don't have any money invested in order to help reduce that. Now, let's say you had $600,000 in a trust. You'd still have a net OPEB liability recorded on your books of $1,385,000 instead of the $1,985,000. It's still kind of ludicrous, to make that kind of a presentation as if you really owe that money. You will over time, but that number will never disappear. And it just shows you all of the intricacies in this schedule of all the items that make up these changes. This year, a significant amount is changes in assumptions. you make an assumption of, okay, we're not going to make 7%, we're going to make 5%. And it has a tremendous impact on these computations. These, I'm looking for the term, I'm losing it. Actuarial computations is what this entails. And so you think something's going to go one way, you make a change, it goes another way. Again, I just bring these up. This is something that, unless you wanted to start funding it, that's a call that you make. But if you just stay with pay as you go, you're fine. That's what you ended up this year in the middle column. You'll see that the employer contributions are equal to the benefit payments. So effectively what you did is you paid the benefit payments out of the checkbook of MRPC, therefore making a quasi contribution as if you had a trust. Any questions on this?
Is that the first year we've done that?
Oh, this has been around for, I'm trying to think how many years it is. It started out with 45, which goes way back. And this is GASB 75, which I think is somewhere in the footnotes that gives an indication of when it started. It's in an earlier page, maybe on page 15, 16 or something like that, when it first came into play. Actually, 75, I got it on the next page. It was effective with the fiscal year ended June of 18. So we're in year 3 of this. But when you started out with the very first year, you had what was called a prior period adjustment, where you established a liability for all the prior year costs. And it was a significant amount of money. It may have been $1 million, booked all at once. So we're 3 years into this. And, again, it's the determination of, if you have money to make a contribution, if you want to go through the process of setting up a trust, your call. Pay as you go works just as well. Any other questions?
No. I don't.
Page 24. This goes back again to that historical retirement plan activity review we started with. It's just the second line of the top, state retirement dispute. That is the total of the state letters that they have provided to you for the years 2013 to 2019. You'll think, why isn't that 2020? Well, the state reports out their retirement system for this particular purpose, for the purpose of the letter, on a calendar year. So maybe it's easier for them to track it that way. I don't know, but this is how they do it for at least pushing out that letter on an annual basis. I would assume there wouldn't be any questions on that. We've already covered this particular point. Now, the next one, page 31. No management letter this year. Considered maybe making a point out of it in this budgetary comparison schedule. If you look in the column, generally what you do in this report is you have to put in the first budget and the final budget. You can have 5 different budgets in between the first and the final, but you want to report on those 2. You don't put in every one that you have along the way. And the first budget that I was given is looking at it at the bottom, the excess of revenue over and expenses. It just seemed kind of odd to me that the budget presentation, I think, needs to be refined, probably in what you're given at the board meetings and what you're voting on. Because I don't think it's practical that you would vote on a budget anticipating that you would overspend by $211,000. So I think there's got to be some work in that area of accounting, properly. I know there's the anticipation of, well, we think we're going to get this contract and we think we're going to get this grant, and you kind of put that all in there, but you don't put the revenues in. I think you've got to be a little bit more realistic of put in what you know to be the case, put your expenses based on what you know, and then if things change, you can always adjust the budget as need be to reflect additional revenues and additional expenses that you'll incur to draw those revenues down.
Okay, so Roland, we'll have the discussion more offline, but you know, the budget that I presented in the past is money that's under contract, or it has greater than a 90% certainty. So if I'm missing a variable or missing the boat on something, I'll certainly make a change. That's not an issue at all.
Yeah. No, I think it's if you anticipate, you know, you've got to go obviously based on what the assumptions are going to be in preparing the budget. You'll have a contract, let's say the state contract, the Mass DOT. You know it's going to end in September. You know another one's going to start in October. So you can feel confident putting a full year in there. The LTA, can you put in a full year? You never know with funding. Some of the others, same thing. You know, if you anticipate something, I don't think you can put in things that you say, gee, I think we got a good shot at it.
Right, we don't do that. So there's something I'm not getting. So we'll contact you. We'll figure this out. I don't want it to be such a variance in the future. This makes no sense to me because I just put in, you know, stuff that's under contract or stuff that really has a high potential of being funded, like a DLTA, and some years not a DLTA. In other words, I don't put in speculative grants like CDBG, just as an example. But I won't burn the group's time. But I really want to tie that down because this has been going on for a few years. And thank you for raising it again. But I really want to resolve this.
Yeah, well, you know, all I do is when I'm doing this particular schedule is I ask for the first budget, last budget. You know, I was provided the documents, and I was kind of surprised to look at it and say, well, you can't possibly plan on losing that much money. You don't have that much money to lose. So,
right.
You know, obviously, the final budget is more in line with the way the year turned out.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. But one of the line items that look kind of out of line that I would think you would have a better handle on would be the indirect costs, because those are, to some degree, fixed expenses. You're going to have the rent, you're going to have the telephone, you're going to have clerical personnel. You know, it's obviously the game changer is going to be when you get grants and you got to go out and hire staff and have direct salaries and related direct costs with those contracts. Those are the things that would move the numbers. And it was kind of interesting to see that the variance in the indirect costs, you had anticipated that you were going to spend $107,000 more in indirect costs than actually turned out to be the case. So again, I think it's just a little time spent on you know, getting a handle on the budget presentation and understanding that usually when you do these things, most of the other agencies that I have, the ideal budget is you come in that the revenues and the expenses are going to come down to zero. Any of the commissioners have any comments or questions or?
No.
Okay, we're all set on that? Okay.
Yeah.
On page 32, this is one of the pages that spreads out all of the contracts. And the reason I wanted to highlight this one is you'll see under the first column, under local assessments, the first column is local under revenues. You'll see that local assessments is zero. And the reason that happens is that all of your assessments go to match contracts. You have matching requirements under various contracts. And so all of your assessments are pretty much used up in that, kind of making it a little difficulty for the agency to develop a profit. Now, you're I think you're the smallest agency that I have in terms of assessments. I have one that I believe is probably double the local assessments from their communities. Obviously, they've got bigger cities, more population than you've got out there. So that's part of the reason if you had $100,000 of assessments, then you would have a little more flexibility in generating some excess revenues over the course of the year and building up, obviously, the net position of the agency. Any questions, comments? Okay. Page 35, this is a project, the computation of project grant on completed projects. And what this does is this gives the agencies who have the possibility of coming back after you for money. To see it in the audit report, generally the 4-year MassDOT contract is the primary one that goes through here, and this is obviously going to be the last one. This is the closeout of the final 4-year MassDOT contract. And what it shows is that you had expenditures of $2,403,000, and you had revenue coming in from the state of $2,410,000. This is based just totally on billings that you make to the statements to the state on a monthly basis. So the end result is that there is a grant payable to the state that gets recorded on the books of the agency, just a little under $7,000. Mentioned before in the past that even though this schedule is presented, the state has the opportunity to see these overpayments. They have never showed a desire to pursue the money. And who knows if it's ever going to happen. I thought there was one guy in the state audit who used to chat about this constantly. And he said, oh yeah, we're coming, we're coming, we're coming. He retired, so I guess they're not coming. Anything on this? Like I said, I put this in. I think I may be the only one that does this. This used to be an old HUD statement, HUD schedule, I should say. And I think it had some value, at least as far as making the agencies aware of the position that you've taken. You either owe us money, we owe you money, and it's there for you to see. So that's the reason for the continuation of having this schedule presented.
Sure.
Now, the next page is page 43, schedule of findings and question costs. What I want to just call your attention to is item number 9, and it indicates that MRPC was determined not to be a low-risk auditee. Now, the reason for not being a low-risk auditee is you have to have 2 prior years without findings. And there were findings, I believe it was in 18, and I think obviously if fiscal 21 doesn't turn up any findings, then that indication of not being a low-risk auditee would be removed. Just in case anybody ever read through the whole report and wondered, why is he making that statement?
Sure.
Okay. Now, what I'm going to do now is move on to the 5-year statements. Statement of net position. Wanted to call to your attention under the column 2020, first column, the 3rd line from the bottom. This is the unrestricted net position of the agency, meaning that if you collected all your current assets together and got what they state they are worth, and you took off all your liabilities with the exception of the OPEB, you would end up with $198,000 left over. And if obviously you couldn't plan a budget to lose 211 if you've only got 198 to start with. So, just again a commentary on the budget to get that thing straightened out. While that's a positive, presentation, at least you're still not in brackets. You're not in red. I mean, it came close a number of years back, I think when MEC was in play. Another item I wanted to bring to your attention is at the top line, the cash and cash equivalents. You've got $153,718 in cash. The cash continuing to be stable at this point. However, one thing you have to keep in mind that DLTA pays you all of their money in the contract in advance. And if they paid you on a reimbursement basis and not all at the beginning of the contract, the cash balance in the agency would be $3,073. So obviously you're pretty dependent on the fact that DLTA advances you that much money. And this is kind of a tenuous position, obviously, to be in, considering retirement payouts of accrued vacation that could be coming, at any point in the future. Okay, those are the only particular comments on this page. Anybody have any questions about the statements I've made? No? Okay. Final page, statement of revenue and expenditures. Total revenues from 19 to 20 up 110,000, and expenditures are up 165, primarily driven by the consultants and indirect costs going up. And you'll see that the difference, probably about almost halfway down, you'll see the operating excess deficiency. That was a line I had set up to remove the OPEB expense, which is not real money and has no real bearing on the productivity of the commission. And so it's the real profit or loss of the agency is defined by the operating excess or deficiency. And this year, you had a deficiency of $4,600, down from having an excess, having a profit last year per se of $49,000. So it'll be good to see if that in 2021, if this kind of starts to turn its way around. Another item on this page, just to bring to your attention, is the overhead rate right after the deficiency or the excess deficiency section of that page. And you'll see it's kind of starting to trend upward by about 11% a year. Obviously, the ideal way, excuse me, let me just take a drink. The ideal way for that to get adjusted downward is to pick up more contracts in which you have more direct labor, where that is the basis for determining what your overhead rate. You take your indirects, divide by your direct salaries, and you calculate your indirect rate. And so obviously the more contracts you have, the more direct salaries you have. It's not that you're necessarily spending less money. It's just that it's a better approach for presentation to agencies to see that you've got an indirect cost, not necessarily at the top range of what they would accept, because some of them do have limitations. I know some of them have them even in their billing processes, but when you do the audit, you have to spread the expenses out to all the contracts based on the actual indirect cost rate for the year. Even if you've been billing at 125 and the indirect cost rate is at 145, you allocate 145. So you're going to end up potentially showing losses in some of those contracts that either only allow you 125 or it's contractually stated in there that they'll only pay a certain level, and at the moment you've exceeded it. Any questions or any issues on that?
I just want to comment on that. So we had a quick email exchange, Linda and Roland and myself, Linda Quinlivan, just before the meeting, and I think Roland, you asked about a $66,000 payment, or not a payment, or a hit to the overhead costs, the indirect, and that was attributed to, and Roland's absolutely right. A community development block grant expired. We had a staff person that wasn't charging directly to a contract. That person was charging to admin for the last 6 months of this particular fiscal year, and that impacted that 144.55 by about 9 or 10 or 11%. So had we had that direct cost contract go through the whole fiscal year, but it ended, then that 144.55 should have been more like 136, something like that, more in line with the 133. Still too high for my liking. We have a 21 or a 22 year median and mean average of 125%. So that's where I like to keep it at most. But to me, the point of these audits is to make sure that we can identify the issues, correct them going forward. I believe I stated it before at a planning commission meeting. If I didn't, then I need to state it now or restate. We're getting out of the block grant business. That business has had blips on our screen over the past 15 or more years. You lay off staff for CDBG if you don't get grants. 2 years later, you get whacked for workers' comp unemployment. If you can keep someone and you put them on admin, it boosts your overhead rate. It's just not a good business to be in, anymore. It just, even though it kills me to say that, because you help a lot of good people that need assistance with CDBG, but it's chasing our tail too much. It adversely affects so many of our financial issues, variables, the audit, the overhead rate, so on and so forth. So we can, I can clearly identify the 66,000 of the 100 and odd thousand. I forget the number, roll 107 or whatever it was, 170 that you explained above. But, so we can identify that. What are the other expenses that hit the overhead? I got to talk to Linda and Linder and peel that
Well, I
apart.
think there's a couple of others, Glenn, that stick out. The information technology, which is something that's come into play in fiscal 2020, and also the consultants that you paid $10,000 to. Obviously not a recurring expense. It just happened to have happened in 2020.
Right. Thank you for helping us all understand those other components. I appreciate that, sir.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think the issue that you're talking about is what they always call in government retrenchment, and it's kind of difficult to just say, okay, well, we've got to get rid of people, and 6 months later you may land something, we got to bring back people. It's a hard decision as to whether you keep people on and hope for contracts to come in, or you're taking a chance of letting a good employee go, because of obviously these issues that you have in making sure you've got the money to pay everybody. Any other questions on the audit? I don't know if anybody really looked at the other 45 pages that I didn't have you look at. The reports have just gotten ridiculous in length over time. I think looking back, I think we had an audit, it used to be about 20 pages, and we're now up to, I think yours is either 47 or 49 pages. It's just beyond comprehension that this is necessary.
Can't agree more.
Yeah.
Thank you, Roland.
All right.
If you have anything else, please continue.
No, I'm all set. I gotta get ready for another one at 8 o'clock. So.
Thank you, Roland.
All righty, you're welcome, guys. Hopefully we'll see you a little earlier next year.
Right.
Bye-bye.
That'll be a goal.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully
Bye-bye,
if the pandemic's out of the way, it will be. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, Roland.
Bye-bye.
So that was the presentation. We need to vote to approve that. I'm seeing here
Yes.
number 3.
And I know that Alan Pease made a motion last year because I checked the minutes for the last year's meeting in the March window. Alan, do you want to do your traditional motion that you typically do each year, or would you like to have someone else do that, sir?
I'm happy to make the motion. I'm not sure if I recall it from last year, but I'll move to approve the report, the audit report by Roland Lamela.
I'll second the motion.
So that approval has been motioned and seconded. Are there any questions on this? Seeing none, all those in favor of the approval, I guess we'll do a roll call. Jason, you want to do that?
Yep, Mike Smith. Mike, if you're trying to vote, you're muted still. Okay, moving on. Oh.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said yes.
Okay, thank you. Rick Ward.
Yes.
Peter Cunningham.
Aye.
John Copeland.
Aye.
Veronica Kell.
Aye.
Alan Pease.
Aye.
Roger Hoyt.
Aye.
John Telepsiak.
Aye.
And I believe that is it. Did I miss anybody?
Did you get Roger Hoyt? I'm not sure.
Yes,
Yeah,
I did.
You did.
Thank you, Jason.
All right. Moving on, we have nominations and elections of nominating committee. What have we got on that? Who is on the nominating committee?
So we're looking for people to serve on the nominating committee. If you just let me go to the script for a moment, please bear with me. I just emailed this stuff to Guy, and I just want to pull up my. So last year, Guy Corbacero, Roger Hoyt, and Alan Pease volunteered to serve on the nominating committee. Typically at this point, these are from the March 28 minutes last year. Chairman called for nominations of people to the nominating committee. Guy, Roger, and Alan volunteered. And then there was a motion to approve the nominating committee of those three.
I'm sorry, Glenn. Glenn, you said there was a motion to have them be the nominating committee again?
That is retiring this year. Happy retirement, Roger. I'm sorry to hear that. So, my guess is, Roger, you don't want to serve on the nominating committee. Okay, understandably. So John, you can ask your fellow commissioners to have up to 3 people serve on nominating committee, sir.
So, are there any people that would like to volunteer to be on the nominating committee?
Typically, at this point, people ask, well, what's involved? It's usually what, John? John, do you want to speak from experience and tell us, or Roger, and help people understand if it's 15 to a 30-minute meeting and maybe a couple of calls? But your fellow commissioners should hear it from you, not me, I believe.
Right. Well, we normally, there's people that they let it be known that they're interested in serving, or if we think that someone might be good, we would contact them. But I'm not sure anything beyond that. It's not labor intensive. It's seeing who's interested and who would be willing.
If I remember correctly, Linda, the bylaws say that you have to have at least one member who's been on the nominating committee in the past, something like that.
Or an officer, I don't recall off the top of my head, but either an officer or on the nominating committee in the past.
Thank you. I'll look at it. Thanks, Linda.
Yeah.
Can I ask what this nominating committee for nominating for what exactly?
The officers to serve as chairman, vice chairman, treasurer, assistant treasurer, and secretary for the upcoming fiscal year.
Okay.
Every fiscal year, and 2 executive committee members at large. Every fiscal year, we elect a new board.
Yeah.
And the process takes place in March and April, where people volunteer to serve on the nominating committee. Then we elect the nominating committee. At the May meeting, the nominating committee presents a slate of officers to the board. And then that slate,
right? And then they're endorsed by the entire group. Okay.
At the, right. Mm-hmm.
All right.
So like Glenn said, it's probably a 15-minute meeting that the nominating committee has to come up with a slate of officers, usually before a meeting in either April or May.
So you'll get staff support. The bottom line is, let's say it's, Mary and Thomas and Richard, I'm trying to pick fictitious name. I'm sorry, Rick Ward, but I just realized what I did. But the point is that Linda's spot on everything she said. So I think the next meeting is May 6th before. Okay. So at that meeting, May 6th. Okay. Thank you, Linda. So at May 6th at 7 p.m. is our regular meeting. May 6th about 6:30 or 6:40, we'd post a meeting of the nominating committee from the 3 people who were willing to volunteer tonight. You show up about 20 or 30 minutes earlier. And prior to that, Linda or I can send you the list of the existing people that are serving on the executive committee, the 7 members, the five officers and the 2 at large. Okay. And then as I think John or Guy and I were talking, or both of us earlier, there's a vacancy of the secretary position. There has been all year. So we have 6 that are filling roles. Of the 7, we need the 7th. And basically that's it. So, Guy and I talked today. He said, hey, does John Telechek want to be chair again? If not, that's fine. I'll continue unless somebody else wants to step up. It's a pretty collegial group, honestly. What I'd like to see is people who are, getting onto the executive committee, maybe in that large position, maybe move up to, secretary, clerk, assistant treasurer, treasurer, vice chair, chair, and we can have some rotation. The bottom line is that with management of nonprofits and governments, the more people that rotate through these positions and everybody gets the title every 5 or 10 years, then all of a sudden you have a board or commissioners, in this case, that everyone's been a former board chair, everybody's been a former treasurer, everybody's been a former secretary. So it's good to rotate people through if they have interest. The job description of chairman: run meetings. You've seen Guy do it. Guy and I talk about once a month on business, maybe for an hour. John, I think we had the same kind of rapport practice. The treasurer would sign checks. The assistant treasurer signs checks. Now in COVID, we did take that back in-house. So when we all go back to relative normal, we hope to get check signers by our assistant treasurer and treasurer again in the future. The secretary, Linda, I hope I'm saying the right word, secretary, not clerk. I apologize if I'm using the wrong term.
That's the right secretary. Yep.
Thank you, Linda. So that person in the past, is the role of that person is not to take minutes, but is to, for me, what's very important when, as Roland said, when MEC was hot and heavy and we were doing real estate projects, we needed certifications of votes. So I needed the secretary to sign a document that said, certificate of vote, this vote, took place on such and such a date. And that's about the most that John White, our dear departed friend from Winchendon, used to do with me, 12 years ago. The executive, the 2 at-large members, certainly, they're getting their feet wet. They're understanding more about operations and so forth. So those are summaries of the job descriptions of the executive committee. And we need, 3 people to sit with at least me. Linda, if you want to chime in, feel free to come early to the next meeting in early May, and we'll walk these people through, present the list of existing, and then we can help facilitate communication between nominating committee members and existing people. And, I don't know, maybe somebody out of Groton wants to be an at-large member on the executive committee, as an example. And I'm looking at a smiling gentleman. Who knows? So you might want to volunteer and step up and do a little bit more. It's hard with a pandemic, and I respect that. Maybe we stay with the same officers, but we still need a secretary. So
Right,
that's
well,
some of the background.
Glenn, I might add to that. I've been on the executive committee for many years, and I started out as an at-large member. And you learn a little more, but I would encourage any of the commissioners to consider being on the committee. You learn a little more. It's certainly not labor intensive. Every once in a while, you might have to have a meeting of the executive committee. It's pretty rare, but you learn a lot more about the ins and outs of this group and other things going on. So it really is worthwhile. I'm not trying to sell you on it, but the first reaction would be, why would I want to do that? It sounds awful. Well, actually, it's pretty enlightening. And again, it's not labor intensive. Like right now, I'm the vice chairman. Guy had a death in the family, so he couldn't run the meeting. So the vice chairman takes over. So that's how many have I done this year? I think maybe 1 or 2 all year. So I haven't had to do anything. Or when it comes to an MPO meeting, the chairman of MRPC, he is a signatory on that. So that's once a month you go to that. And again, the vice chair, if the chairman can't make it, he's the backup. So really, that is about all you really generally do. But it is very informative and interesting. It doesn't sound it, but it is. So that's my 2 cents.
Don't everybody raise your hands at
Well, the
once.
smiling gentleman from Groton should have muted his camera, I guess. So I'm sort of new to the group, I think, in the operation of what goes on here. So I'm not sure if I could offer a lot. But I'd be willing to, I guess, step in for something.
Sure, if you threw your name in the hat and then, wanted to start out as a member at large, that's great, because that, like I said, that's how I started. And then you learn a little bit more, and, so you wouldn't jump into, say, the chairman or whatever at first. That's
Right,
usually,
whatever the entry level is, I suppose, yes.
A good entry level is nominating committee. Quite frankly, Peter, Rick, I'm not picking on you. I'm looking at another smiling face. Sean, I think there's a smile there too. It's such a small screen. I'm not sure. But John Kolesiak, maybe you'd be willing to serve on the nominating committee with Sean and or Peter and or Rick as Roger's. I want to say retiring. Roger, you said it some other way. I'm sorry. But maybe the three of you will be willing to come for 15, 20 minutes early to the next meeting. And
sure, I've been on the nominating committee before, but I wasn't this past year, so I certainly would consider going back on.
Let me put it this way. If 2 more people volunteer, we can close the meeting and go home.
I'll volunteer.
I see my, Dave, Sean.
Was that Sean?
Yes, that's Sean.
Sean and Peter, were you raising your hand, or was that Rick? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll throw my hat in the ring.
Thanks. Well, we appreciate the three of you just to serve on the nominating committee. This is very helpful. And I think we should explain a little bit more. So if it's okay with the three of you, we'll post the nominating committee meeting for 6:30 p.m. on the date that Linda said, the first Thursday of May, that I keep forgetting the number, and I'm not going to try to remember it.
May 6th.
And what's that? Somebody just said and helped out.
Yeah, May 6th.
May 6th, the 6th. Okay, thank you. And I promise to send out some literature tomorrow about the bylaws. I'll highlight the relevant section of the bylaws and the current slate of the executive committee, and try to provide some other anecdotal backup bullets. How about that? I'll do that tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Sounds good,
Great.
Glenn.
All right, great. Sean, Peter, John.
Yes, sounds good.
Mr. Chairman, back to you.
Can I interrupt, Glenn?
You can always interrupt,
Glenn,
Linda.
this is
Go ahead.
Linda. So
Go
we
ahead.
have to elect the nominating committee. So you have to call for a motion and then do the roll call. Roll call, John.
Beautiful. Thank you, Linda.
All right.
So it would.
We need, wait, was there a motion first though, or?
You
motions. So
you need a motion to appoint John, Peter, and Sean with surnames in the blanks, Kolesiak, Copeland, Cunningham, to the nominating committee that would serve at the very least at 6:30 p.m. the next meeting to nominate to develop a list of officers for the executive committee. That would be the motion.
Sure, I would entertain that motion.
Somebody gets so moved, we can get you home earlier.
Yeah, so moved, Chair.
There we go. Who made that motion? Was that Alan?
Second?
Alan Page, yeah.
Thank you, Alan.
All right. So it's been motion and seconded. All those in favor of accepting that nominating committee, we'll do the roll call, Jason?
Yep, Mike Smith,
Yes.
John Kolesiak,
Yes.
Rick Ward,
Aye.
Peter Cunningham,
Aye.
John Copeland,
Aye.
Veronica Kell,
Aye.
Alan Pease,
Aye.
Roger Hoyt.
Aye.
Sounds good, thank you.
I believe
Aye.
that's everyone.
And I really would encourage people that might be interested in serving on there. It's educational and it's not a lot of work. So let's see, what else is on the agenda for this? Is that the end?
New business, unless somebody has something. That's up to you.
Yeah, I don't have any new business. Is there anybody that has anything they want to add? If not,
I have,
I would,
I have one item. This is Brad
go
Harris.
ahead. Yes.
Currently, we are advertising for 2 part-time traffic interns for summer. Typically, we have college students work for us, placing our traffic counters and collecting data throughout the region. We've been advertising for a few weeks now. We haven't had any applicants. So I'm starting to look and see if we could reach out to maybe area high schools, seniors or juniors or seniors to be. So if anyone knows anyone or has any contacts at your local high school, please refer them to the MRPC website. There's a job description and announcement on the front page. The job is about $13.50 an hour for 20 to 30 hours a week, going from hopefully April to about October. So if you know anybody who might be looking for a summer job, it's a good opportunity to, and it's not too difficult. You're outside most of the summer, so I'm just throwing that out there, see if we can get any candidates to apply.
Sounds good.
I'm looking to get my kids out of the house. Does 10 and 7 work for you?
Do they have a license to drive?
No. Yes, definitely.
They can use your
Maybe
car.
you'd want to do 10 and 7. Whew. All right, anything else? If not, wait, we have someone? No. All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. I don't believe I need a second. I can just close the meeting, Glenn. I declare this meeting
Yes, go
closed.
ahead.
All right. Have a good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Right, yeah.